couple more seats for everybody here. Well, hi everyone. Thank you so much for coming here tonight. We're super excited that so many of you have decided to spend the evening with us. And I hope you can take home really great new friendships and lessons that you can bring to your own organizations from this event. For those who don't know me, I am Andres Blank and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Scout. I'm here with my colleagues and co-founders, Chris Kalmine, who is a product genius and master, and Genevieve Lidstone, who is a marketing wizard, that thanks to her, this event is a great success. So before we kick off this great panel, I just wanted to tell you why we decided to start this community. And the main reason comes from two statements that I hear from every company that are true, but also contradictory. The first one comes from the CEO of the company. You always hear the CEO saying that the people are the biggest asset of our company. And we are not going to be successful if we don't have the best people in the company. And the second statement comes from you, from the recruiting department. And it is that you, the people department, who should make companies to be successful, are the most under-resourced and understaffed department of the whole company, and you're always being asked to accomplish these crazy goals. And what's more impressive to me is how you're able to accomplish this with so little. So that's why I wanted to bring all of you together so you can share your experiences and not only learn from this great panel, but also just hear everything that you've done to overcome your challenges of being under-resourced and how you've been able to build great companies. And in turn, hopefully from all these lessons, we can all go back and even build better organizations moving forward for the New York tech ecosystem. So this leads me to tell you a little bit about why we decided to build Scout. As I was mentioning before, like we hear all the time that recruiters are very crunched with time. And we're trying to make you do your job better and in a more effective way. We strongly believe that the best candidates are not usually applying to your job post or that they're actively going to these marketplaces waiting to be hired. The best people are actually already in companies, but they're open to new opportunities. And the problem is that spending all your time online on LinkedIn, Connectify, and Tello is very time consuming. And as we mentioned before, it's really hard to find the time to do this. So Scout is the first tool that really sources for you in a completely automatic way. All you have to do is give us a job description, and the next day you start getting super personalized candidates from all over the web. We also find their personal email address, and we create these very personalized templates so you can email them in just one click. We also use artificial intelligence and humans to make sure that the results that we give you are the best ones. And it's only us that we're very excited about the results that we've had. We only launched 6 months ago, and we're already working with over 50 companies. We're working with large companies like Bloomberg, Sony Music, and New York Life Insurance, but we're also working with a lot of startups such as yours, like DigitalOcean, YouTube, BetaWorks, PillPack, Security Scorecard, YieldBot, and many more. We'd love for the opportunity to work with you. In fact, if there's any role that has been very challenging for you to fill, we would love to take that challenge. And to make it even easier for you, behind your name tag, like Oprah, we have a nice gift for you, which is a coupon to do a free search on your behalf. So we'll be able to do a free search for 2 searches for the price of 1. So thank you so much, and I hope that you can consider using Scout in the future. So with further ado, I want to introduce you to our moderator of this panel, Dave Carvajal, who will introduce the rest of the team. Dave is a legend when it comes to recruiting. He's been doing this for over 20 years. He got his start in '97 with Hot Jobs, which became very quickly a public company with over $1 billion of revenue. After that, Dave went to build The Ladders, which became one of the leading job marketplaces and grew to 400 people and over $80 million of revenue. And now, Dave is the co-founder and CEO of Dave Partners, one of the best-known executive recruiting firms out there, and we're very excited to have him on board for this panel. So, Thank you so much, and yeah.
Andres, thank you for that generous introduction. I think I'm going to invite you to Thanksgiving dinner. You can introduce me to my family. It would be great. Look, the success of every CEO will be determined by his or her ability to recruit and hire well. It's you people in the audience and this panel discussion that make the magic happen every single day, every single week. So it's my great pleasure to introduce this great panel. And I think we're going to have a lively debate. We're going to do this for about 40, 45 minutes and leave some room at the end for some Q&A. So make sure you write down some things. Before we get started, I'm going to ask everybody to take their phones and go ahead and put it on airplane mode. I'm going to do that as well. Okay, so we've got Loren Boyce, Director of Talent at DigitalOcean. I'm going to ask you to hold the applause till the end, when we'll have a rousing applause for everyone in the panel. So come on up, Loren. Lorraine Buhannic from AppNexus, Senior Director of Talent Acquisition. Charlie Keinath, Talent Acquisition Lead at Intersection. And Natalie Ledbetter, Director of Talent Acquisition at Curalate. Great, so welcome everybody, welcome panel. We are going to have a no-holds-barred conversation, lively debate. Everything is open for discussion. Please, we'll have some great Q&A at the end as well. Okay, so I'm just going to kick us off with, look, the two most, well, let me say, like, no company ever got great because they were amazing at payroll and benefits administration, right? The most strategic parts of HR are recruiting and culture. I'm going to start out with a little bit on culture, and then we're going to dive deep on recruiting. With regards to culture, what are the most effective ways to assess cultural fit? Lorraine, maybe start us out.
Sure. So first of all, I hate the word fit. I think that means 100 different things to different people, so I would highly encourage you not to use the term cultural fit in your organizations. One of the things that we did at AppNexus that was really helpful is we started by defining what our hiring philosophy was. And that seems really simple, but aligning on high-level principles around what great hiring looks like and what a great hire looks like was, I think, the foundational start to us being able to hire at scale and maintain the same bar for talent as we grew. But once we said that, we still had to figure out how do we codify the intrinsic part of all of our employees that make great hires. And so we actually spent quite a bit of time developing our intrinsic interview, which is called High Potential. And essentially it's a way for us to assess not so much the candidate's experience, but what intrinsically motivates them, how they respond when they're faced with a challenging situation, how they deal with adversity, what they're passionate about, what gets them excited about waking up in the morning and coming to work. And through that, we can really get a feel for how they will align with our values, and we can shift the dialogue away from culture fit and really think instead about culture add, right? You should think about every single one of your hires as a way to add to your culture, not necessarily fit into what you already have, because culture evolves over time, and that's what makes a really vibrant community. So I guess to synthesize, high potential interview, really, really impactful, and making sure that everyone understands your overall philosophy around hiring and is aligned around it at the company level.
Great.
Who else has thoughts on it?
I can talk about it.
So when I think about culture fit, right, like each company has an overarching culture to it, and then there's many subcultures that are found within a company, right? Your tech culture is going to be a little bit different than your finance and accounting culture. Your editorial culture is going to be a lot different than your legal culture. So I think when I think about culture fit, it's more about being, a good person and a good employee, and hiring for that type of potential. And the culture will come as the group evolves, especially if you're in a smaller startup. It might be different than if you're at Bloomberg, right? There's also somewhat of a double-edged sword effect sometimes with culture, because if you hire too much of the same type of person, you're not going to create that diversity within your workforce that breeds those new ideas of people coming from different walks of life and different situations that can then apply that to their everyday job.
I would just add, I think that, is that me? There's a vibe coming off of that. I would just add that I think that when you're talking about culture fit, and I totally agree, misnomer, that should be intrinsically linked to your cultural values. And that should be something that should be a priority for every startup founder, is really codifying what those values are first, and then hiring to those. I also believe that there should be sort of an aspirational nature to those particular values, so that you're not only looking for people who are going to make sense right now, because all of us who have been in hyper-growth startups know that culture evolves, it changes as you grow, as you scale. So things that are going to essentially you're going to be looking for people who you want to add to your culture over time. And then I guess the last thing that I would say is it's really important to spend time with so I guess back up for 1 second. There was a great article on the First Round Capital blog, about how 80% of your culture should really stem from your CEO. And so if that person is very involved in kind of developing those initial, whatever your parameters of your culture are, whatever your kind of, what your cultural values are, you should really spend time with them understanding kind of the people in your organization who really exhibit what the culture should be, and really understanding those people. And then the other piece of which I totally agree here is just the diversity piece. If your culture, if your sort of core values are leading you to hire the same person over and over again, it's time to go back to the drawing board and adjust those, and then you would adjust your recruiting process to kind of fit those values.
So yes to what everyone said, but what I would add is that some of the best things that you can do to take home today, if you don't have a whole program around what a great interview is, and I think that it starts with recruiters talking to people about what would have to exist for you to want to come take a job, our company or any company, and listen for those things that kind of map to your values and your culture. And I agree with the whole culture fit is not really great. I think it's all about team fit, and you touched on there are different cultures in every single department. There's an engineering culture, there's sales culture, and I think that the more you can kind of map to what makes those teams successful and look for people that embody those things, it's better, and it's just richer to kind of, you don't want everyone to be the same, but you want everyone to kind of have the same end game, and how they get there isn't as important as they get there, and so finding out those discovery calls helps.
That's great. I think Charlie brought up a great point that is reverberating. How do you eliminate how culture fit or hiring for culture fit might lead to unintentional bias? Right? What are the kind of things that we can do to make sure that doesn't happen?
Yeah, so one of the things that I've done in the past with the team is you have the general interview team, and then I always have somebody that came from a different subset of that group to act almost as the cultural interviewer, right? They didn't have the veto power to necessarily say, hey, we're not going to hire him. But it was always almost like a checks and balance to have somebody that wasn't directly working in that group be able to sit in and kind of give that check without, I guess you could say, having any type of bias towards it. I think that's important.
I would just add that, I talk a lot about having a very kind of rigorous, built-out recruiting process, and then obviously if your company has funds in order to invest in training training around interviewing, training around what unconscious bias is. That's a huge piece. Most hypergrowth young startups do not. And so that falls on us. And I really believe that us as recruiting leaders really should be spending time. I know, at least on my team, we build out interview kits for every single interviewer for every single role. And the reason that we do that is to hopefully, I don't believe that you can ever eliminate bias entirely. But that said, going into these interviews with a much more sort of programmatic experience and having interviewers who have been through a training is absolutely crucial.
If I could just add one thing, I think that's such a smart strategy to have kind of cross-pollination on your interviews to get different perspectives. And I also agree with your point that you can't actually eliminate bias. What we found to be most effective is to give people the tools to talk about it. So if you start by saying, bias is real, we are all biased, it does not make people good or bad people, it's like a genetically coded thing in all of us, right? So like, start there. And if you don't have the funds to send people to trainings, Facebook has their entire D&I training online for people to use. So pick and choose, grab a few classes, but have those conversations and weave it through not just interview training, but everything you do as a company bias should be a part of it, because otherwise people are never going to feel comfortable talking about it in a really open way. And that's where you get in trouble, right? Because it's hard to be the only woman in the room in a deliberation session on a candidate and have a strong perspective that maybe a candidate isn't appropriate for the team, but be outnumbered by the men on the rest of the team. And I'm using a stereotypical example, but if you've teed up that conversation by giving everyone permission, vocabulary, and training to bring that up and to speak up, then you can at least reduce the amount of bias, but I don't think you can ever really eliminate it.
I would just add that some of the things that I've done before are, I actually had a candidate come in and he interviewed with all men. It was an engineering role. And he said, I think it's weird that there were no women on the panel. And I was like, you're right, And so it's taking a look at that too, and whether it's bringing someone in who, don't pick any old person just because, they're a man or a woman, but get someone on the team, because I think that having women on interview panels when women are coming into interview and men are coming into interview is super important. It's one little easy way that you can help these types of things along, and you can start tomorrow.
I love it. You're taking us to a whole nother conversation that I think is both timely and germane to this discussion, which is, nothing can stop an idea whose time has come. One of the candidates for president is a woman. What are we doing in, STEM fields to maybe attract, right? And tech actually has a better report card than the rest of the industry, than, like regular Fortune 500 companies, right? But what are some of the things that maybe are, our companies doing to attract women in leadership roles and in professional roles in STEM fields?
I'll just say that I've worked at companies where there have been women on the exec team, and that really helps, and it sends a strong message, whether it's, I love seeing like sales leaders that are women. We have a woman VP of sales, Emmanuel Scala, she's amazing, and I think that when you see women on exec teams, it's an empowering thing, and that company hires and values women, and I think it just kind of trickles down, and then the more women you have around, the more women you'll get. And I think that it's something that, if you go back to the beginning of a recruiting cycle for a position, if you try and get all the recruiters to think like, let's make sure there's a woman in every pipeline, even if they're not available, find someone, talk to them, and just be aware and start to, we present the candidates to a platter to the hiring managers, right? So it's like our business and it's our responsibility to make sure that we can bring a diverse set of candidates and just be more aware. So I think it's talking about it helps.
We have a question in the back.
I would just love to know how your company is dealing with parents.
Great. How are our companies dealing with working parents, maybe maternity leave, paternity leave, all those things?
I was going to say say that's actually one of the strategies I would recommend you think about when it comes to hiring more women into your organizations. Is thinking about how to create an environment that's parent friendly, but also a community where it's not just about having a great maternity leave policy. It's also about thinking about things like returnship, which we're hearing a lot about, right? Like women who maybe were out of the workforce to take care of an elderly parent or children and have amazing experience before and are coming back in.
But why are we talking about men too?
Yeah, both, because there's a lot of different circumstances, but since we're talking about women, I think that's a great strategy.
I said maternity leave.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of, I think an important part of recruiting, especially in technology, is to reach out to different like user groups and host meetups and be able to reach out to a group like Women in Tech and say, hey, guess what? We have this beautiful space. Let's be able to house something. We'll be able to sponsor you. There's plenty of groups out there, especially from a technology standpoint. I feel in the past 2-3 years here in New York, it's been growing like wildfire. It's a great thing, and being able to
I can speak to that for a moment, yeah. So we, honestly, I think at the end of the day, it's all about flexibility. And if you want to remain competitive in this landscape, and we're all competing for the same talent, like, don't get it twisted, we're all going after the exact same people. You have to, in order to maintain diversity in your population.
But it's not a question about learning, it's more a question about like.
I'm going to ask you to hold on to, those are great questions. You've got a bunch of them. I'm going to ask you to hold on to them. Let's revisit them at the end.
So as I was saying before, one of the important things is if you're a growing company, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take those actions early before it gets too late, because nobody wants to, hey, we're going to go out and hire women engineers, and a woman engineer comes in and they're interviewing with, a panel of all male engineers, right? And it takes, they have to be there in order to then go out and get there. That's basically what I'm saying, is you have to basically go after it in the beginning, and it'll help to cultivate that as your company grows.
That's great. That's great. I'm going to put us on a slightly different track here. It's been said, what gets measured gets managed, what gets reported improves. What are the metrics that we're using at a high-tech growth company to measure the effectiveness of talent acquisition of the recruiting function? What are, if you have one metric and/or dashboard of metrics, what would you say are the key metrics that really kind of indicate the effectiveness and performance of your recruiting?
We look at pre-hire metrics and post-hire metrics, so which is a myriad of things, because really at the end of the day, you're trying to get faster at recruiting when you're scaling really quickly. You're trying to identify what sources are working and not working for you, and where to find the best talent. So we look at a lot of things, like I said, as we're hiring, and then so things on our recruitment team are kind of the generic things like hiring speed. How many QCs, how many candidates are you seeing for each role, and kind of very baseline metrics that kind of everybody looks at. I think the important piece to really actually getting very good at this and starting to really pinpoint what you're looking for and what's going to be successful in your organization is your post-hire metrics. And so one of the things that we enacted at Curalate is I created a survey that we send to all of our hiring managers at the 90-day mark. And I want to know things like, how long did it take this hire to get up to speed? Would you hire this person again? How do you feel this person is a good fit for our culture and is actually contributing to the growth of this organization? And really getting a baseline on kind of what they thought about the hiring process and things like that. So I think there are a myriad of data points that we're all kind of suffering from this analysis paralysis thing, which, by the way, I think we can all agree that recruiting's a little behind on the metrics piece. We're trying to get there, but we're a little old school. But that said, I think really at the end of the day, looking at your metrics after you hire can almost give you sometimes better information than what you're doing, the time to fill, sourcing and all of that stuff. So,
can I add something to metrics? So I think that I remember when I was an individual recruiter or even a lead running recruiting for a business unit, I remember the managers that didn't trust me would just want metrics, right? Like, I want to report every week and I want to see where candidates fall out of the process, what stage, and sometimes I'd send them and they wouldn't even open them and I'd spend like hours trying to I'm not a spreadsheet person, but it's like I realized that sometimes, metrics are very important, but I think it's important to know that sometimes when you're asked for metrics, it's sometimes kind of a symptom of something else. So I think that it's a really good idea to figure out why someone wants those and what they're trying to figure out. And another thing about metrics is I think one of the biggies for me is that candidate experience. I want to know, the best scenario for me is someone doesn't get a job at DigitalOcean, but they say the interview process was amazing. I had a really good time. It was really challenging. Loved my recruiter, loved the interview team, and I'll totally recommend people. That's the holy grail. So that when you're starting out, because all you have is buzz, that's a huge one. So I think it's really important to measure that kind of stuff right away, because then you can go back, because everyone's still figuring out their interview process, right? We're still figuring it out. It's going to be kind of fluid for a while because different groups have different needs, and just different stages in your company will require you to change it. But that's one that you should always. You start getting a reputation. When I first started here, there's some crummy reviews on Glassdoor about our interview process here. And when they talk to me about what do you want to do your first 30, 60, 90 days here, I need to clean that stuff up because that's just bad press, and everyone can control that that's in this room right now. So that's a biggie.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add is we've gotten to the point where we've been at AppNexus for 5 years, so we've tried a lot of different things around metrics, and I think the analysis paralysis really resonates with me. It was a big topic at the LinkedIn conference. If anyone was there, how we were measuring too much, we don't know what we're doing, which I thought was interesting. But I do think that setting benchmarks is really important on both the qualitative stuff, so the candidate experience, but also your hiring manager satisfaction, and then some tangible things. So we talk a lot about time to fill. I would throw that out the window. Time to fill doesn't matter really, and look at conversion metrics instead. So how many people are going from applicant to interview to second interview, and that to offer, and so on and so forth, because that's when you can tell, seems like my sales recruiter maybe isn't super well calibrated because they're passing all these resumes that aren't making it past the first round. So what do we do about retraining that person to make sure that they get a little bit closer to hiring manager? So if you can only measure one thing as a recruiting leader, I think that's a really easy, relatively low lift from a heavy metrics perspective to do. But then if you can kind of weave through that a number of different other things, definitely do it over time, because the more historical data you have, the more powerful the metrics become. And that's when it becomes very easy to have those tough conversations with hiring managers who think their search is totally off track, and you can point to, well, over the last year, it's taken about 120 days to fill this type of role. So we shouldn't worry that we don't have people at day 30. That's kind of what we can expect.
That's great. If you think about the hiring process before the hire and during the hire, designing that candidate experience, there's been some great conversation. What are some of the other things that we do to really kind of optimize for that candidate experience, whether it's training and getting everyone aligned around what we're looking for, and then also what are the tactical things we do to really kind of design a good experience for the candidates. And then also, Natalie, you and I have talked a little bit about what you do with candidates that don't get hired.
Yeah.
Maybe share some of that as well.
Sure. So I'm very passionate about the candidate experience. I feel the exact same way as Loren, where I want, and this has happened multiple times, which is really exciting, which is, I want candidates who, don't make it through the interview process to walk away saying, wow, those people at Curalate, they're so down to earth, they're really easy to talk to, I really enjoyed my interview. I felt like they got a good sense of me, and that's the most important thing too, is, so what we do up front, and I think this is a huge help to like identifying what kind of talent is going to work for you guys, but also like ensure that you're not having those redundant interviews. I think that is the biggest pet peeve of any interviewee, is going to an interview and being asked, what is your greatest weakness, like 5 times. And so, I have really implemented a very sort of rigorous process around, again, the kind of upfront work that I expect my team to do, which is essentially you will spend an hour with the hiring manager prior to starting to recruit. Period, point blank. You will spend that hour, and if that manager does not want to give you that hour, you are not to fill that rec. They should give you an hour of their time to explore the role with you. And I even have my recruiters actually creating ideal candidate profiles, like buyer profiles in sales. So they have an idea of kind of what that ideal candidate looks like. I want them understanding sort of the goals of the role and what they're going to be facing in the day-to-day, and then crafting all of those questions for every single one of our interviewers. It is a lot of work. It's a lot more time than I think a lot of recruitment teams spend. But that said, it will help you kind of you will see such a return on the investment when you look at your attrition numbers, because you've actually hired really wisely up front. So that's what I would say on sort of that side.
Yeah, I think on top of that, one of the things that I've started doing is actually, before the interview even takes place, it's about gathering the interview team themselves and putting everybody in a room and saying, all right, if this is who the candidate is, these are the questions that you're going to be answering, because I'm sure everyone in this room has seen it. Whoever's going next to interview is ripping their resume out of the printer, and they're walking into the interview room and they're reading the paper, and then you stop by, what am I interviewing this guy for again? And you're like, oh my God, come on. We just talked about that. But having a lot of that pre-work done up front will save everybody a lot of time. And then being able to collect the feedback is super important, right? Because you want to be able to get back to that candidate as timely as possible, because chances are they're not just interviewing with you, they're interviewing elsewhere. So sometimes if we can beat them to the punch, or at least, hey, here's an offer, if you're going to accept the job, we need to know, you could be, you got to be nice, and if they want to see something through, I understand that, but if you could snatch them off the market, the faster the better.
That's great.
I just want to add that one of the things that we did, I think one of our recruiters, Sadia, did today is set up Slack rooms with the managers and the interview teams, right? So it's not like you're not always going to get that minute or 20 minutes to sit with everyone. So like be in a constant loop. Managers, one of the things that you find out when you have these like kind of intake or searching, like recruiting kickoff meetings is, what's the best way to get in touch with you? Like I'm asking everyone here, because I've only been here for 4 weeks, by the way, so I'm still trying to figure it out. But like some managers want everything in Greenhouse, some managers want an email, some managers want Slack. So I think that you've got to go where they are. And one of the things that I think is super important, 2 more points, and I'll shut up. But sometimes someone comes in and you do a pre-brief, but the manager hasn't said, just say it's a staff engineer, right? And the manager hasn't said, this person really isn't at that level, but I want you guys to all interview this person. Maybe this person will be this level, maybe it'll be lower. Just set expectations so people, I've been to roundtable meetings where they're like, nope, 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 for the staff level, but the manager never gave everyone a heads up that we're looking at this person to maybe do something a little less senior, and so that's a waste. And I came from the agency world, and so I'm all about candidate prep. So I do so much candidate prep, and I send LinkedIn profiles, I send Twitter, handles, I send blogs that people have written for them to read, of the people that are on the hiring panel, and I feel like the more time you put in with the candidate, you're up to bat once, twice, right? Like these candidates do not grow trees, everyone knows that. So that's key, and it's time consuming, but like you said, it's worth everything, every single minute you spend. And then they know that you're really an advocate for them. Plus, you can go back to these debrief meetings, you spend so much time getting to know the candidate, and you're really able to speak on their behalf and kind of help with some of the shenanigans that sometimes go on in the debrief meetings. Meaning, you sometimes have to steer stuff.
If I can add just one more thing, I don't want to belabor this point, but I think everyone knows sort of a hot topic. First off, 2 of our coordinators are here, and I want to recognize them because they are a big part of making our candidate experience amazing, so thank you. But I think that in addition to everything that you all have already shared, you have to remember that you can distinguish yourself by creating a really personalized experience for candidates. So we can compete with some of our competitors on comp, on benefits, on an amazing office, although I do think our office is great. But you can compete in really tailoring the experience to the candidate. So when you come to AppNexus, you're sitting in the cafe, you're not in a waiting room. We want you to be sitting next to all of our employees, grabbing breakfast or coffee, and feel like you're a part of our community. You walk into the interview room, Catherine or Diana have your entire schedule. Hi, Catherine. These are all the people you're meeting. We're happy you're here. Their name, the time that they'll be coming in. There's an iPad in the room so they can look at people's profiles. We ask them what they want for lunch. We try to really make them feel like they're taken care of throughout the entire day. And that is something that comes up consistently in our Glassdoor review. So it's a little bit of extra work. But honestly, if you take one thing, the whiteboard thing, so simple, makes all the difference. Like imagine walking into an interview room and your first name is on the whiteboard. That makes a big difference. It makes you feel like you were expected, that we're excited that you're here.
That's great. Love it. Did you have something?
No, I was just gonna say, so if you do, because I do like the Slack chat, because it does save time, you should definitely have a long meeting if possible before that, and then you could replicate that over Slack, but just make sure that, 1, it's private, right, so no one else could find that, and then 2, make sure that those interviewers, what I like to use that for is not to give feedback, because you don't want to poison the well if somebody else is going into that, but you do, you tell them to use it, hey, if you weren't able to complete a question, or if you want to dig deeper, let that next person know. And they also know that, hey, it's their time to be in that interview, and the candidate isn't sitting by himself for 20 minutes, half hour, because that's the worst.
Yeah. Great. I want to dive into this concept of, everybody on this panel is responsible for both the tactics and the strategy of designing, a singular candidate experience, but also responsible for hiring, 10, 20, 30 people a month, or whatever kind of growth you're having, right? So what kind of process and what tips do you have or ideas do you have around organizational scale and growth, at the kind of macro level?
Yeah, I'll hop in there. So I think sometimes simplicity is the best way. You don't want to have too many cooks in the kitchen. Sometimes I see it that, you have 10, 12, 13 people, interviewing. I don't think it's not scalable, especially if you want to meet X amount of candidates. I'm a big believer in the 10-3-1. You should be able to interview 10, have 3 favorites, and then be able to choose 1. If you can't get to that metric, then I think there's something broken about either the search or what you're doing. From there, though, I definitely believe it's something where, it's our job as recruiters and kind of the first point of contact. We do kind of the screen, we're always screening more in than out. Hit the culture piece. Next step should be a call directly with that hiring manager or a delegate from their team. Come in one day, meet 5 to 6 people. If we need to, send them a take-home assignment, maybe have them come back one more time to present, and then be able to make an offer. So you should, I think a well-oiled process is about 10 business days between that first interaction and that offer.
I would say just be ruthless in how you prioritize the reps too. So if you have a limited size team and you have 30 different jobs, they're not 30 high priority. Every manager will make their jobs a high priority, but I think that it's really good to be really realistic. And one of the conversations I've been having recently with people is, and sometimes they don't realize, the hiring managers know that, a certain recruiter's working on their rec, but they might not realize they're working on 5 or 6 other things for other managers. So when you put it in terms of, okay, Danny is your recruiter, he works 40 hours a week, here are all the open jobs you have him working on, what percentage of time do you want him to work on this, or this? And then you can really, it becomes super clear to the managers, and sometimes it helps them figure out, okay, let's work on these first. Because I think prioritizing, when you've got a huge number of jobs to fill, that's like the first thing, so you know that everyone's on the same page, then the process and so on.
The other thing I would add is it's important to think about how you're using the people on your team, right? So if you have a 2-person team, everyone's going to be all hands on deck. If you can have a slightly larger team, I think we found it very helpful to distinguish between sourcers, recruiters, and coordinators. So the nature of those jobs are very different, and people are going to be more successful if you allow them to focus on one thing and really become experts in that one thing. Similarly, technical recruiting is different from non-technical recruiting. So if you have the ability to have 2 separate roles, highly encourage you to do it that way. Again, it depends on the scale, but that was one of the most highly impactful thing we did when we were starting to scale from 150 to 400 people the first year that I worked at AppNexus, was taking a step back and thinking about our team first, because we're always very focused on like hiring for the rest of the teams and actually doing the due diligence of, okay, what are we being asked to do? What are the key challenges that we're facing? And what do we need to get there in terms of our own internal org structure? Is really, really important. It takes time to kind of get it right. You can iterate on it, but don't sacrifice spending time on your own team for the sake of just filling recs, because you're fighting a losing battle when you do that.
I totally agree. This is a conversation that we lead in our executive staff meetings. I want all of my heads of all my different departments weighing in on how, in the same room, talking about how important this VP of product or product manager or developer or whatever it may be, so that all of us are kind of understanding how many roles we have open and prioritizing together. Like, okay, we need this head of product marketing, or our messaging is going to be screwed up. So we actually need this person before we need this data scientist. And being able to prioritize together and get kind of the entire leadership team involved in that, I think is great. And I think you're absolutely right. One of the things that I had to do a couple weeks ago, because we actually are down a recruiter, is say, look, I need you all to understand that in order for us to help you, we have to help ourselves first. And that means that for us, the priority number 1 is getting this recruiter position filled. We all know that we have to be considerate of like budgetary constraints with using agencies and things like that. And so I made my recruiting team priority number 1 and just said, look, you guys are going to have to wait until these roles get filled. Obviously, when you have a larger team, you can kind of work on things at the same time. But I wanted everyone to understand that Trish is working on this product role and this developer role, but at the same time, her number 1 priority is finding another tech recruiter, period, point blank. And so I think having that discourse with the rest of your entire executive team, and it just facilitates understanding kind of what, I don't think a lot of company founders and leaders of different disciplines understand just how much pressure, saying something like you have 30 recs open actually means, and how much time actually goes into that. And so being transparent and being able to talk about those things with the entire leadership team, I think just makes that so much more apparent to them.
Can I just add one more thing? I think you have to be honest when you're having trouble too with some of those jobs, and be super upfront about like, I'm in trouble, this is what we've got, and like bring them into your world so they can sometimes, maybe there is a plan B that you don't know about. And another thing is like when you have all these jobs that you need to fill, even if we fill them, can we onboard all these people properly, give them like a great experience, and are there people that are going to mentor and bring these people up? So that's another thing to kind of keep in the back of your mind. So there's so many moving parts, but I think if you have those conversations with the business, you just become, one with them, and it's a lot easier to move things forward.
I'm not sure if everyone caught that, but it's a sign of just being a total assassin and trained ninja. Natalie, even when she's not recruiting, is recruiting. She's down a recruiter in a room full of recruiting professionals. They're down a recruiter. I'm going to switch topics.
Two, I'm actually looking for two people.
I'm going to switch topics. This segment is going to be called Negotiating with Your CFO. What do you folks do when, your VP of engineering, has only one open rec and you've got 2 stars in the house, like right now, and he wants to hire both? Or, you're trying to close the person and their comp, their actual comp, is a true reflection of the market, but the budgeting process was maybe under, developed. What are some real tangible things that you do, either to prevent or to deal with those kind of things?
I think it's about you as a recruiter teaming up with that manager to build a business case around it and show the value that they will add. So is it something, it might cost us $40,000 more for this person, but the product that they might build might net you $1 million down the road, or 10x that. So it's about being able to come up and be strategic and work together with a plan, and then go present that as more of a business case than, we need this. So it's all right, well, why do you need it? Let's show that from a numbers perspective, because the CFO is definitely a numbers guy.
We've implemented a lot more rigor around opening of recs. So for, say, the first 3 years of my time at AppNexus, it was a little bit of the Wild West. Like, someone wanted a rec, it was loosely approved by their manager, somehow we had to start recruiting for it. And then oftentimes we'd find ourselves midway through a search and we had to halt because it wasn't approved and stop. And that's so painful for our team as well as the rest of the business. So we actually have hiring managers fill out a form before we kick off anything, and that's reviewed weekly by our senior-most executives. So that helps prevent some of those situations. In general, if we find too many great engineers, we never have a lot of issues finding the money on those. But I'd be curious to know how you guys manage that if that were to happen. And then the other thing I will say is we do, so there's obviously market data that our comp team uses to price roles. We add to that information that we're getting from candidates. So any person we talk to, whether it's a screening call, someone we tap on LinkedIn, we ask for their compensation information if they're willing to share it. By and large, they are. And we send that to our comp team every month. And so that supplements the market data with quote-unquote real market data. They're weighed a little bit differently, but it helps us see if we're seeing the market move really quickly in one particular skill set. So I think the form before you kick off the search and constantly reporting on the market has been really, really helpful.
I love that idea about capturing it at the front.
Yeah.
Because facts are friendly, especially to CFOs of the world. And I think that if you're trying to make an opportunistic hire and you have data, and if it's over, we've had a bunch of those, haven't we, Griffin? Yeah. Recently, where just someone comes in and they're amazing, we want to do something, but they're really expensive, and we're just starting to figure out what certain roles cost in certain geographies and things like that. So it's great to have that up front. We have to start doing that.
So we actually get a lot of our salary information from our VCs, which I think is one of the things that talent acquisition professionals should do a lot of, is a lot of leaning on your VCs. And so First Round in particular shares a lot of that data. They survey everybody anonymously and collect that information. So I have that. That's my first piece. And then we do exactly what you did, which is if we have found, a myriad of candidates who are all 20, 30 grand, way out of where we had kind of approximated this role fitting. I get super scrappy with my recruiters. I say, put together a spreadsheet. I want to see their profiles, their years of experience, what company they're coming from, and how much money they're making. And generally, you're going to get people who are kind of all in that same range if you're going for the superstar or whatever it may be. Show them the data. Really, at the end of the day, if you have data to support your argument, that's how you get it approved.
Great. What do you think are the kind of most prevailing trends happening in recruiting. What are some of the more maybe advanced techniques or tools that we're using to really attract talent?
I feel like D&I has been a really hot topic this year. So how do you get more women in the pipeline, but also how do you broaden the aperture of how you think about diversity, not just for women, but what other types of diversity? And I'm seeing a lot of partnerships and programs sort of spinning up around that particular area. We've done a lot of work on it as a team, and it's been a really healthy, awesome dialogue. So I think that's one, and then the second is talent branding stuff seems to be a pretty big area of focus too. I don't need to keep talking about LinkedIn, but we are working with them on a pilot of a tool called Elevate, which allows you to turn your employees into kind of marketers for you by publishing. You kind of curate information for them to share on their network, and that's been super powerful. We've actually expanded our reach really significantly by using it, so we're always trying different things. But those two areas seem to be coming up a lot for me, at least.
I think recruiting using stories is really super important, and I love when you see a company that has, a story about why someone joined. We have an engineering manager who, before I came here, he wrote a blog about why he joined DigitalOcean, and I, not an engineer, but I found that like super affirming because I already wanted to come, but it was neat to kind of see a different perspective. So I think the more that you can share around stories or challenges that are, that you'd be able to work on, problems you could solve, but from the employees' voices, not from the recruiters. Like, it has to be authentic and genuine. Because the worst thing is you don't want someone to come to work and see that first day as the recruiter and it's not as advertised. And it's awful and the team is all right. Like, you have to really, really be very transparent and very open and share that stuff. But I think that if it's coming from the people that work here and the teams that they might be joining, I think it's a really great way to recruit. And you can even have videos where people talk about, like, on your website, like why they joined, what they're working on. That's more compelling than an email from me.
I agree, and I was going to say you're absolutely right. And shout out to the news people here. We've seen an incredible lift in applications coming in because of those videos. But two things that I'm thinking about. So one, I think absolutely right, hearing it from the people. So we started this thing at our all hands, which was, pardon my French, it's called I Work Because I Love This Shit. And every week at our all hands meeting, we send the question, why did you choose to come to Curalate, to our employees? We get usually a written thing, sometimes we'll get a video, sometimes, it gets a little insane sometimes. But we share that with the entire team, and so what that does is just, it continues to kind of remind people why they're here and the types of people that they're surrounded by. But we took it another step further this year, which was pretty cool, which is we actually made a book. And so we have beautiful photographs of, our incredibly diverse team with their written passage of why they chose to work at Curalate. And that's something that we bring that book, sometimes we'll give that book to candidates, sometimes we'll bring it to events. We have things on our website. We've made cards that we send out to people. That's been really, really cool. The other kind of, I think, important sort of topic that we think about a lot, very data-driven organization, is sort of predictive analytics and how that plays into recruiting. I've done some modeling on my own for our engineering team as far as looking at historical data. So we have this many referrals and this many inbounds, and then we have this many passive candidates in our pipeline. That yielded how many hires. So understanding kind of how we project how many people we need in the funnel in order to get those results. It's not a perfect science, obviously. There's subjectivity when it comes to humans. But that said, I think that one of the newest things technologically that we're going to be seeing a lot of is using predictive analytics in recruitment.
Can I just add one thing? I read this article, I forgot what company, but they're actually recruiting hard internally, and they're looking at people, they're using data to figure out who who's turning 40, who's turning 50, who's going through these like milestone events in their lives, and they start pitching them on internal opportunities in the company, maybe even other groups. And it's a way to kind of just really hold on to that employee, knowing that people, they've got a big school reunion coming up. That's they go and they start feeling crappy about their jobs and their life. They've figured out these moments in people's lives when they make a move, and they're using it to their advantage by recruiting into their own, employees. So it's, I don't think you have to be a pretty big company and have a lot of internal opportunities. So it's probably not any of us right now, but it's something to kind of be aware of because they're using data in very clever ways to figure out great points to reach out to people.
Great. That is the end of regular programming. I think we've got a few minutes left for Q&A. For all of those great questions that you've saved, we've got a gentleman in the back.
Hi, my name is David. I'm with Keinath. So I just had a question. I know Loren was talking about like the holy grail for like the whole interview process. So I was just wondering if you guys had anything implemented for like let's say a candidate doesn't get hired. If you guys have anything implemented for them for like learning experience. I'll just be honest here. I actually interviewed with Curalate a while back, and I was like applying for going through several interviews, and Natalie was the only one that actually responded back to feedback about my interview. So I just wondered if you guys had any thoughts or anything implemented for that or any kind of ideas.
Wow, great. So the question is around the candidate experience for candidates that don't get hired.
I would say that you have to call people and have live conversations when they don't get a job after they've interviewed on site. Like if you are telling people no on an email, it's like Carrie Bradshaw being broken up with a Post-it note by Burger. Like, don't do that. So like you have to call someone and you have to tell them why. You have to be really honest. I mean, it's something we're talking about here. Like we want to be really transparent, tell people why. They were passed on for a role, but one of the things that we have to do is instead of getting into, a lot of people say, listen, you weren't a match, but we're going with someone else. That's an awful thing to say to someone, right? So if you can give people, here's what happened. You weren't connecting all the dots in terms of what your strategy would be. We kind of heard you had this philosophy about management, but we weren't figuring out, we couldn't really suss out whether or not you would be able to be an effective technical manager here. But next time when you go on an interview, think about that stuff. So give them something actionable that they can actually take home and get better at. So I think that feedback, timely feedback in person, if someone does a phone interview and it's like, I think you have to use your judgment. You might be able to get away with it with a phone, with an email, but I think, again, if they're spending 90 minutes or an hour on the phone with someone, just pick up the phone and call them back. And let them know that, like, one thing a lot of people don't do is they don't say, hey, listen, this person wasn't a fit for this team. Is anyone else at the company looking for, like, that's some stupid stuff that we don't even do all the time. Like, share internally, because if you get into these, like, silos, so I think that could also give extra life to someone who came in who's a great fit, would be a bar raiser, but just not for the group that they interviewed. So that's just something that we could do inside. But it's getting back to people at a time when I think feedback.
That used to be more common.
Well, to be clear,
50-year-old to me, but you really need to do that.
yeah, to be clear,
I mean, that should be something you should be told, not like, well, if we have time. That should be, I would say, top.
so
Are you be missing good candidates?
Absolutely.
So let's be very clear. Thank you so much for the shout out. I really appreciate that. But that I think speaks to the white glove treatment that is I do not tolerate anything less than white glove. I do not care if you hate the person within 5 minutes. You are going to respect them and treat them just like the best candidate you ever have met. It becomes a challenge when you're scaling, because if you're getting a lot of those emails regarding give me feedback, and I'm talking about having 60 people coming through on a weekly basis, it becomes a challenge. But that said, Like, frankly, I feel like I work all the time because if I was a candidate and I was in that situation, and frankly, we thought you were a great candidate, you just weren't fit for that role at that time. Like, I am notorious for having people come and say, hey, do you remember me? I met you a year ago. I love this other new role, sounds great. And me saying, absolutely, let's get you in here. That is the respect that people deserve. It's not fun getting that form email that says you didn't pass, you're not up to par. But if a person reaches out to you and says, hey, can you, I'm really working on this. I'm really trying to get a good job here. Can I have a couple of minutes of your time? Absolutely. Absolutely, you can have a couple minutes of my time. And if that means I, go to bed a little bit later, you have people who remember you for doing those kinds of things.
Yeah, not only that, but then they remember you too, right?
Exactly.
That way next time maybe that perfect role comes up that they are a good fit for and you reach back out to them, they're going to get right back to you right away because they remember the great experience that you had.
Yeah.
And I think you touched on it. Probably one of my favorite stories is I had a candidate, technically competent, didn't get the role, referred somebody. That person was a complete rock star and actually built 2 awesome products that went into production and made our company a lot of money. And I would never have met her if it wasn't for that introduction from that candidate that I called back to give him the feedback. And I gave it to him straight. I'm like, hey, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. You did X, Y, Z wrong. Next time, let's make you better. And that was, I guess, his gift back was the perfect candidate. So it's a great thing for sure.
Yeah.
I want to know what your experience was with number of people that a candidate needs to interview with before decisions made. So, at my company, they really pride themselves on getting a really thorough interview culture. I know when I interviewed with them, I interviewed with 12 people, and it's like, we're going to lose people. We've already lost people. Some people are at different stages in their interviewing at other companies. How do you get through to a hiring manager that they may not necessarily need to talk to everyone before making a decision?
I love it. I'm going to kind of frame that, and I'm going to add something to it, which is, how do you manage the need for approval or the need to be liked that some hiring managers might have, and they want to introduce junior staff or subordinates that might be interviewing their boss, right? How do you kind of limit the gravy train of people jumping on the bandwagon to be on the interview committee because it gives them personal significance or status?
So when that happens, I say you guys are gonna have a coffee date or you're gonna go to lunch. Like, it's none of that 1 hour each person or something. So it's a good way. It's like a social setting. Sometimes you can. Sometimes that helps. I mean, sometimes it's really important because I would want to meet who was going to be my manager. But if the panel is set up properly, that should be all the person. That should be the only group the person needs to meet with, and then that person's hiring manager. And maybe at a particular level, you might need more, hire other people to come in. But it should be short and sweet altogether. It's more of a training issue, I think, when there are 12 people because they're not trusting that 4 people could make the decision. But that's kind of a thing that you could work on with. The thing is that that's a legacy thing that's always been happening in your company. It's I think you have to talk about the cost of that and how you're missing out on candidates, and it's going to impact your whole recruiting. It's going to impact velocity.
It goes back to candidate experience too, right? Like, no one performs as their best self when they're doing 16 interviews back to back, right? Like, that's not humanly possible. So limit it. And there's a ton of research around the optimal number of interviews. There's articles written about this. Frankly, more than 4 is probably too many, especially if you do a phone screen and potentially a final kind of more informal thing. If more people want to meet the candidate, do 2 online interviews. I think that's a great way to kind of get around it with clear mandates on what people are assessing. And it kind of ties back to what you were talking about, that 1 hour meeting with the manager up front, right? If you have that conversation and you clearly map out, these are the 4 things that this person needs to do, 4 or 5 things that the person needs to do to be successful in the role. Each interview should map to that. Everything else is extraneous. And that's just because people don't trust each other's interviewing skills. And so maybe that's the conversation you should be having.
I also think like one of the biggest questions you need to ask those people, because frankly, Google did a study and they said that 4 is the magic number. Yeah. I say between 4 and 6, and anything more than that, if you cannot get a sense for if this person is a fit after 4 to 6 hours with them, you are doing it wrong. Period, point blank. Because how much new information is coming out after 8, 10, 12, like seriously, how much new information is coming out? So what's the point? To me, at that point, you are not only being disrespectful of the candidate's time, you're being disrespectful of your team's time. So that I think also kind of just, that shows you the need for incredibly disciplined, process-oriented interview process. Period, point blank. But really, ask them, how much new information is coming out after 10 hours with this person?
Maybe you could suggest like pilot them, like for the next couple of candidates, let's do how to see what happens. And maybe they don't want to ease them into it.
It's 2 different locations. It's a Estonian-based company, so they want to make sure the Estonian team talks to them, and then the New York team can talk to them, and then the CEO, and hey, one of our lead investors wants to talk to you. So it just seems sometimes to take a long time to make a decision.
Grouping them up too, grouping them up maybe, and then having somebody join via Skype, or maybe it's not in that allotted time. Maybe it's, hey, they're at home on their couch at 7:30, 8 o'clock. Why don't you open up your computer and do it then?
We're going to have to clear the room for the salsa dancing, which is going to start in about 15 minutes. We've got time for one more question.
So I wanted to know what your thoughts were behind testing candidates. I know our organization issues 2 mathematical assessments, one at home online and then one in person. It takes about an hour to 45 minutes. So what are your thoughts on mathematical testing candidates? Yeah, for non-engineers, all positions.
So, I will say, I think there's a place for that, and I don't know what roles you're talking about, but even on my team for recruiters, one of the things I've learned through experience, good, bad, and good, is that recruiters need to be able to write very well. You need to be able to write a compelling pitch. This is a sales discipline. You better be able to convey your message in a very succinct way. So I want to see what they can write, and I want to see it in a timed environment where I can, a generous timed environment. But
it's more mathematical,
okay.
Regardless of like office manager.
And are you doing it on a coder pad, something like that, where you can actually see what they're doing in real time?
One is in person in real time, and the other one is like at home. We'll send you a math test in time. Everything is time.
Are they going to be having to answer problems or figure out problems like that in their role?
Irrelevant.
Yeah, I'm going to chime in on that just because I have a little bit of experience. Look, I think the important thing is you're going to want to get legal counsel. Some of these things that we discussed, there's a time and a place for, and I'm like the last guy that wants to do that, but you are going to want to get some employment law counsel occasionally on some of these things. I think that is one of the kind of hot topics that you want to make sure that you're not, again, creating bias for any group of people or anything like that.
I just wanted to add.
This is really the last one.
No. I wanted to add to your point that for those of you that, I don't know who did the PHR here or not, but that is a very, very hot topic when it comes to avoiding lawsuits, because it has to be, if you're doing a test, it has to be strictly related to the job. So it doesn't make sense for you to test, or for the company to test on math for an admin role unless this person is doing certification. But it absolutely goes back to discrimination, and it has been proven court cases against it. I'd be happy to connect with you.
Definitely.
Great. You've been a fantastic and beautiful audience. I want to thank everybody for showing up. I want to thank this panel up here. This was very good.
Thanks so much. Feel free to hang out for more time if you want. There's still drinks, pizza, so you don't have to leave yet. Thank you so much.
Oh, yeah,